The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the fourth and final session of episode 1 of Join Digital today. This session is all about next best action, and my colleague Jim Kelly, the principal consultant here at Bluven, he's going to be deconstructing next best action and sharing with you how it works and the components that you need to make it successful. If you have any questions you'd like to provide to Jim as we go through the session, then please do so using the GoToWebinar technology, and we will attend to those at the end of the session. Just before we begin, a little reminder that if you miss anything, if you've missed any of the sessions from earlier today, or you want to recap on this session or any others, then we will have all the on-demand recordings available on Friday this week. And of course, we'll email those out to everybody. I'd also like to say that if you would like to check out the agenda for Join Digital episode 2 next week, which is going to be on Wednesday, April the 29th, then it's going to be the agenda and registration is going to be available this evening. In fact, it's going to be available in about an hour from now at bluven.com/join. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton over to Jim Kelly. Jim, the reins are now yours.
Thanks, Anthony. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Next Best Action, supercharging the customer experience. So what do we actually mean by next best action? So next best action, also known as best next action, next best activity, or even recommended action. It's a customer-centric marketing approach that considers multiple different actions that could be taken for a specific customer and decides on the best one. The next best action, an offer, proposition, service, etc., is determined through a combination of the customer's interests and needs on one hand and the marketing organization's business objectives on the other. Typically, it's very rare that a business jumps straight into next best action, but almost all organizations have some form of basic campaign management capability. In this webinar, we're not only going to explore how next best action logically works, but how organizations like yours can build upon your existing processes and approaches to supercharge your customer experience. So let's start with campaign management here on the left. We first create a proposition for a product or service, because this is offer centric. And then we attempt to find interested and eligible prospects for that proposition. Direct marketing, as we all know, is typically automated in the form of campaign management tool. It's often product centric and usually always marketing centric. Whilst still typically product and marketing centric, the next step on our journey is the campaign optimization. It puts analysis at its core, informing and feeding the decision-making process to improve the performance. You may already do some campaign optimization in your business, and we'll be looking at some of the various ways in which this might actually be deployed. And then the next step on our journey is predictive optimization. This takes the analysis element to the next step, really. It's using algorithms and models as part of the decisioning in a campaign that we rely less on empirical knowledge when optimizing a campaign, but more on statistics. And then we reach this next best action step. And next best action completely shifts the marketing paradigm from product-centric to customer-centric. Machine learning actually takes predictive modeling to the next level again, introducing self-learning into the equation so that models are constantly trying to improve the performance against objectives. And then finally, which I will touch on at the end, is journey optimization. And that takes into account The fact that not all offers, products, and services, or even actual conversations, are relevant at all times with all customers. It's also likely that a customer may be on several journeys with several smaller experiences at the same time. And journey optimization allows for arbitration across several potentially competing recommendations, combining them where relevant and overruling some of the recommendations when not. So let's start with campaign management. I know this is going to be very simplistic for many of you, and you probably already all know this, but bear with me while I set the scene. With campaign management, as discussed, we first create a proposition for a product or a service. The offer may be driven by a number of external factors. It might be a change in catalog, the time of year, a new season, available stock. Perhaps you have an awful lot of stock that you want to shift, price changes or drops, or the release of a new product, service, or offering. We need to find interested and eligible prospects for our proposition. That's our target. And of course, we need to create a way to deliver our proposition. That's our creative. Now, of course, in an omnichannel world, we typically have more than one creative message and or delivery mechanism. Online advertising, retargeting, digital channels may all be part of that mix. But for the sake of simplicity, let's just choose email here. So if you have direct access to your own customer data through a customer data platform, for example, you might make your own selections. But whether you are self-empowered or you rely on an internal resource or even a third party, the criteria that we choose for our selection can be driven by many variables. These variables will often change with each offer so that we target each customer in a much more appropriate way. That increases the interest in our proposition. This, of course, increases the chance our target audience will take the offer and subsequently improves our performance of the campaign. Some of you may not even yet be at the point where you can define an audience easily, and you just actually have to mail everybody with exactly the same thing. However you get to this point, we now have our target audience. The next step, of course, is automation. The campaign management tool, or you might call it marketing automation tool, it allows us to combine the creative and the audience together in a schedule, perhaps, to communicate to go out to a specific date and time. And this is how we effectively build the campaign. Once the campaign is live and the customers start reacting to our proposition, we can then start understanding campaign performance and responses. On the campaign performance, these might be basic channel metrics like how many emails were delivered or sent, opened, and clicked. Or we might have a more holistic view of our customer behavior and then be able to actually see how they reacted, which product they purchased, how much they paid, etc., and even whether they followed the call to action that we actually had in our email, and relate that back to the original communication itself. This, of course, is the basis of attribution, but that's a conversation for a whole different day. Responses down here on the bottom right are also really valuable for understanding how the proposition, how it fared in our campaign. And from our audience and the responses, we can get a list of people that took the proposition and a list of people that didn't. And therefore we can look at the differences between them. Who did our creative really appeal to, etc. No doubt this process is one that you are all very familiar with, and one that forms the mainstay of most of the marketing strategies you might have in place. So if we move on now to campaign optimization, which is the next step in our tiered approach, we introduce our ability to perform analysis at the heart of the campaign itself. At the heart of the campaign optimization, certainly iterations of the same proposition or campaign, it's our ability to dig deeper into different elements of the data to improve, inform, and optimize the process. So let's dig a little deeper into analytics specifically. There are several approaches that we can and should take when analyzing within our campaign to optimize. Prior to even planning our process, an increased knowledge of our customer universe using profiling, segmentation, and behavioral clustering will really give us extremely valuable insight into how our customers actually behave, how they respond in general, what they like, dislike, when they like to open emails, all those sorts of things. Propositions, messaging, and behaviors can all be fed into our knowledge pool, informing not just this campaign, but every marketing action thereafter. When we're making our selection for our target audience, we can analyze our universe using the various attributes available to us. We can use factual, descriptive, profiling, and behavioral data all combined to create an improved list of consumers and potential targets. The analysis we do on both the universe and the audience really helps to inform the creative. The tone of voice, messaging, content, different imagery, all can be improved by analyzing what's worked before for similar audiences. In addition, analysis can also drive personalization and multivariate testing. And then finally, on the right-hand side, by understanding when and how our audience are most likely to consume our content, we can make tweaks to the automation to increase all aspects of the campaign performance. I'm just going to pause there a sec and remind you that if you want to ask any questions at all, please do feel free to use the on-screen tool to help you ask those questions, and we will get back to them at the end of the session. So to continue then, we have talked about how analysis can be used to improve or optimize our campaign. But I also want to touch on these two elements on the right-hand side. When analysis is applied to these areas, performance and responses post-campaign, we start to enter into the next level of optimization. Separating these four key areas into pre and post-campaign analytics, we can improve our insights across the board, both for the same proposition which is being rerun, and also to inform every future proposition or message that we want to actually send out. This is all manual work, by the way. This is still manual. So pre-campaign empirical knowledge of your own brand, how it performs, what your normal strategy is, what your normal customer profile looks like. Also the knowledge of the marketplace, of your own industry and your competitors. Offer and product knowledge, what's new, what's going out of fashion. Fixed criteria that you have no control over, for example, opt-ins and compliance and those sorts of things. And of course, you may have some limitations around the data you can actually use anyway, and therefore you may have to use guesswork. So you have the ability pre-campaign to also push through the other things that we've talked about, lookalikes, descriptive behavior. So what does this customer look like? How do they behave normally? You may have some predictive elements already within your customer universe, and you may have some socio-demographic information. If you put them all together, you can use clustering to actually see, well, how do they naturally form behavioral entities? But when we move into post-campaign analytics, when our responses from campaigns start to arrive, we can analyze the profile of those that opened, clicked, performed the call to action we delivered, and analyze the differences between them. For example, what is the profile of customers that opened and clicked through in the email but didn't go on to buy, and how are they different from those that actually did go on to buy, if indeed at all. And of course, the performance of the campaign doesn't only have to be a monetary objective. And this is quite key. Perhaps your communication was intended to positively affect the lifetime value or the net promoter score or any other metric which you might have. Arbitration at this point also becomes important because it also lets us understand what other emails or campaigns are actually running at the same time, what other ads also might be out there, and whether with better arbitration we could improve our objective even further. So doing this type of analysis manually for every campaign, for every step, for every execution can be very time consuming and even cost prohibitive if it's a small organization or a small marketing team. So if the campaign automation allows us to remove the grunt work from executing the campaign, what if we used predictive modeling to automation to remove the grunt work from this analysis approach? So essentially, predictive optimization, which is the next step, is, in a nutshell, it's actually using algorithmic automation to do this analysis for us. And by using the performance metrics as an input into analysis as well, we can create models that, using the customer eligibility, i.e., which offers are they allowed to have, these models can easily calculate the propensity for each customer to act upon our proposition. They can also calculate the propensity for that proposition to increase the objective that we have, whether it be money, the lifetime value score, all of those things. And ultimately to recommend whether this specific proposition or offer is a good idea for every customer in the audience. Therefore, if you have a high propensity to take action and a high propensity to positively affect the objective, the mathematical equation between the two, which is typically weighted, is the ability to automate this approach, and by injecting a self-learning mechanism into the models, i.e. schedule them to retrain and relearn, we can effectively implement a proven analytical approach that consistently improves itself. And again, I would remind you, if there's anything that we're touching on that you want to ask any questions about, please do feel free to ask. Okay, so let's move forward and show that by attaching our new automated analytics approach to an offer, we can leave the decision as to whether it's the right course of action to take to the model itself. Should I or shouldn't I recommend this offer when compared to offer B, offer C, or offer D, or call or leave them alone, or should you contact them? If you should, what should you show? Product recommendations, offer recommendations. Now you get the idea. So this is answering the question, what's the next best action to take? It's also a change to being customer centric. So rather than product or offer or proposition driving the decision, all customers are contacted depending on their contact preferences and or our optimized contact frequency. What they are sent, however, is dependent upon eligibility and offer optimization. Next best action. Bear with me while I find my next slide. So by moving through the process of combining offers together and then automatically deciding which offer has the highest propensity to be taken action upon and the highest propensity to impact the objective that we're choosing, we're effectively running a campaign, but we're doing this in a much more analytically superior way. so that we're driving a customer throughout a journey as to automatically choose what to do and when to do it based on their behavior, not on our own. We could, of course, as we discussed before, have a customer on several journeys at the same time. Certainly, if we have overlapping services or sales cycles, or we have, I don't know, multiple brands, if we have a complex purchasing platform, it's perfectly feasible that a customer might have extremely different experiences whilst they touch your organization. But by being customer centric and journey aware, journey optimization then allows for many recommendations to potentially be made at the same time. This is where arbitration is incredibly useful. Deciding through an overarching analytical approach, the combination of best journey and best action centered around both the customer's needs and our business objectives, supercharging the customer experience. So I do hope that you found the webinar and the topic interesting, perhaps even taking something away with you that will help you to work towards supercharging your customer experience. But before we do, there are some benefits and some drawbacks to the next best action approach. The benefits really are that the next best action paradigm is particularly well suited to inbound marketing. So if I call your call center, or I call a branch agent, or I speak to a sales representative, being able to immediately take the next best action as part of that in real time as we talk to each other is particularly powerful. However, in a world where we have many offers, many products, many journeys, many objectives we have to actually manage, it also has quite significant benefit and is equally applicable for outbound direct marketing as well. Because really, when you take hold of next best action, it's about enabling the company to respond to the customer's needs during the interaction and as quickly as possible. But where you have outbound direct marketing, in this case, the next best action strategy is typically applied as batch overnight, for instance, because there are so many possible competing discussions. You have to know which customer will get which offers before you can arbitrate. So in that instance, you normally apply them and aggregate them and then execute a normal campaign as we have here on screen. The drawbacks are twofold, really. The first complication is that most organizations are structured in a product-oriented way. We still tend to think about what products are available, what services are there, what can I sell. But this means that product managers or sales teams have specific targets, even specific volume targets. The next best action approach, although perfectly capable of reflecting this in the priority, it's normally used for bottom line optimization, not top line. Organizationally, this means that different lines of business will need to potentially collaborate to define the next best action strategy and make sure that the objectives and goals they have been set can also be achieved. The second complication is its unpredictability. Ironic, it's all about predicting outcome, but it doesn't mean as a human we can understand what that prediction will lead to until we get results. That means you might have implications for supply chain management, logistics. Let's say you've got 1,000 umbrellas left, and the next best action sells those out 300 times quicker than you can get them in. That's a supply chain issue, which next best action cannot really account for that well. Staff incentive schemes where you're paying the marketing team on improving click-through rates, this is not about click-through rate. This is about the objective of the experience. And next best action, however, those strategies can be made predictable again by simulating them up front. So there are ways around this. I hope you have found it useful. Thank you very much for listening.
Lovely, thank you, Jim. That was pretty impressive. I think what's really come out of that session for me is that next best action has always been a bit of a mystical, magical piece of functionality. And commonly associated with the need to have maybe a team of analysts or some data scientists or modelers to invest in some machine learning or to build some models. But the way you broke this down, it feels a lot more achievable. So I think that's a big success. Now,
it's a popular misconception actually that you need this black box thing that you throw rubbish in and then magical pixie dust erupts the other end. It's not that. It really isn't that hard, but it's easier to get to it if you go through optimization, predictive modeling, and then add on these little elements one at a time.
Yeah, and I think you've explained a very logical process there. Can I ask before I go to we've got a couple of questions in the question box. Just from my own question, I guess, is I know you've been doing this a long time. You've consulted with many hundreds, maybe thousands of marketeers over the years. How many marketing teams have you met along the way that you would say with confidence are actually able to achieve next best action in this way, to have optimized self-learning automation?
Unfortunately, not many. Organizations want it, they ask for it. They constantly put out RFPs, which is our way of describing requirements documents that mention predictive modeling, regression, machine learning, all of those things that we've just worked our way through in the last 28 minutes. But it's quite rare to actually see them deployed properly in this way. And I don't really know the reason for that, but aspiration and ambition is what's driving next best action. When it comes down to it, though, I think the average marketeer is just overwhelmed with work. And the irony is that if you put a little bit of effort into automating your analysis, you actually get more time back. So it's one of those mini strategic projects that you need to find time to explore as to how you could do it if you were asked to. You will find it's a lot easier than it is.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through the questions in the order they've come in. The first one is narrowing in on what you talked about in terms of arbitration. They're asking, is that the same as contact fatigue?
Okay. So by contact fatigue, we tend to think of that as, take you for example, Anthony. I don't want to send you more than 4 communications in a 7-day period. I do not want to overmail you, over contact you. So I might set a limit on 4 emails a week. Now, if I have preference center management, you could even tell me that you want no more than 4, you want no more than 6, or you only want 2. Contact fatigue is a binary cutoff. It is, have I already sent you 4? If I have, I won't send this one I was about to send you until I can. Arbitration actually tries to look into the future. So in the next 7 days, of the 4 emails that I might send you, what should they contain? So it's more about looking forward than looking back. Being able to predict next best action for you is in the future. And this is the whole point, that if I know that the next email probably has 12 offers in it, I can arbitrate of those 12 offers, you should only receive 4. So the short answer is it's not really the same thing. Contact fatigue is a binary cutoff. Typically, arbitration is looking at what's the best way to communicate to you in future when I am able to.
Okay, great. They've just posted to say thanks. That's a great answer. So well done. The second one in the list here is next best action is talked about in our business as the answer to everything. Is there a right and wrong use?
Yeah, it is. It is not the answer to everything. You have to remember that even if you are a very, very experienced data engineer and analyst, you're always going to benefit from empirical experience as well. A statistical model will be able to tell you the type of customer who is browsing your website at 10:30 at night on a tablet like an iPad or a Galaxy Note. If it has the data, it will tell you the type of customer that is doing that. What it's not able to do is inject the human part of our business. People buy from people. So why would a person be on an iPad at 10:30 at night? Well, maybe they're in bed and they're browsing your website in this golden hour of the bedtime browsing hour. A statistical model won't tell us that. So we still need to inject human interaction into what we're doing. So the answer to the question of, is there a right and wrong use? It becomes wrong when it's making an arbitrary decision and nobody knows why it's doing it. If you can't describe the model, if you can't describe the profile, it's just blindly making a recommendation, and that becomes uncontrollable. And the second you lose control, you can't control your objectives, you can't control your performance. It might as well be just a black box, and we might as well just walk away. So the right time is when you want assistance for making a better decision. The wrong time is when you just don't want to do anything at all and you trust maths alone. That's my personal view.
Great, thanks, Jim. And so bedtime browsing hour, is that officially a thing now?
It's a thing, yeah, it's a thing. It's a really popular thing in my house for certain.
Great. Okay, so we've actually just gone 3 minutes over the allotted time. There's another few questions, so sorry, we'll come back to you personally with those. Jim and I will have a catch up and email you some replies for those. So that's it. That's the end of episode 1 of Join Digital. I want to thank everyone who's taken part. I've seen many names come in to multiple sessions. It's been a tremendous attendance. So thank you everyone involved. Thank you, Jim, as well.
Very much.
I keep saying it, but there's going to be plenty of people watching this on demand as well. So thank you for accessing on demand. Now, if you've enjoyed Join Digital today, you've probably heard me say this a few times on other sessions, but we do have 4 more live sessions already lined up, ready for the 29th of April next week. You can see them on screen. They're going to be great. So the first session of the day, Jim will be back, and he'll be joined by Lisa Flanagan from Blue Ven as well. They're going to be talking about the 5 critical elements of a customer experience transformation. We're going to have a 3-way panel with Jim and some other members of his team. They're going to be talking about answering an aggregated list of 10 top FAQs for CDPs. And those are aggregated from many sources. I'm then personally having a Q&A with David Rabb, the founder of the Customer Data Platform Institute. So that's going to be great. Don't miss that. And then to end the day off, I know Jim touched on it and said it was touched on attribution in his session and said that's a conversation for another day. Well, that other day is next Wednesday. So we've got Gabby Schneider. She's going to be taking you through 7 single touch and multi-touch attribution models and how and when and why you might use those. So yeah, I think that agenda and registration is now live on the site. So at blueven.com/join, if you go there now, you'll be able to register for episode 2 and take a look at those sessions in more detail. So thank you very much. I hope you've had, I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Wherever you are, I'm really thankful for you taking part and hope to see you again next week at episode 2. Thank you and goodbye.